The night was cruel, its cold winds cutting through Samantha's tattered coat as she huddled under the awning of an old bookstore. Rain pattered relentlessly on the pavement, a dreary soundtrack to the endless monotony of her days. Samantha clasped her thermos of lukewarm coffee, savoring the fleeting warmth it offered. She had learned to survive on scraps, not just food, but scraps of kindness, hope, and dignity. This part of the city was her refuge, not because it was safe, but because it was predictable. Few people ventured here unless they had to, fewer still noticed her. That was why the limousine startled her. Its gleaming black exterior was out of place, cutting through the grit of her surroundings like an alien craft. Samantha stiffened, gripping the thermos tighter as it rolled to a stop across the street. She told herself it was none of her business. Rich people did strange things in strange places. She wasn't about to get involved. Then the door opened and a man stepped out. He was tall, with sharp features and the kind of presence that demanded attention. His tailored navy suit clung to him as though it were crafted for no one else, and his leather shoes gleamed despite the puddles beneath them. He glanced around briefly before crossing the street, his stride purposeful and unhurried. Samantha's instinct screamed at her to retreat deeper into the shadows, but there was nowhere to go. He was already heading toward her. "Excuse me," he said, his voice calm yet firm, as if he expected obedience. She narrowed her eyes, every muscle in her body coiled like a spring. "I don't know what you're selling, but I'm not buying." He stopped a few feet away, unfazed by her hostility. "I'm not selling anything." His gaze lingered on her, not with pity but curiosity, which unnerved her even more. "I have a proposal." Samantha barked out a laugh, sharp and humorless. "A proposal? Right. Let me guess. You need a kidney, or some other nonsense." The man's lips quirked in the faintest smile. "Nothing quite so dramatic." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a business card, extending it toward her. "My name is Mike Spector. I'm the CEO of Spector Enterprises." She eyed the card but didn't take it. "Congratulations, I guess. Still not interested." His expression didn't change. "You will be." That arrogance set her on edge. "I doubt it. I need someone to attend an event with me," he explained, undeterred by her reluctance. "Tomorrow night. One evening. $50,000. The number hit her like a punch to the gut. 50,000. For one night. She couldn't hide the flicker of disbelief that crossed her face. "What's the catch?" she asked, suspicion thick in her voice. "No catch," Mike replied. "You'll accompany me as my date to a high-profile gala, that's all." She crossed her arms, skeptical. "Why me?" "Because you're not part of my world," he said simply. "You're not trying to impress anyone, and you don't have ulterior motives. That's what I need." Samantha studied him carefully, searching for cracks in his facade. The man was infuriatingly calm, his confidence like armor. "And after that?" she pressed. "We part ways," he said. "You walk away with the money and I get what I need, no strings." Her stomach churned with indecision. She didn't trust him, how could she? But the money was too tempting to ignore. $50,000 could change everything. Finally, she extended her hand. "Deal." The next morning, Samantha was whisked away in the same limousine to a five-star hotel. As the car pulled up to the marble entrance, she tried not to gape. Crystal chandeliers sparkled in the lobby, casting a warm glow over polished floors and plush furnishings. A sharply dressed concierge greeted her. "Miss Taylor, welcome to the Sterling Grand. Please follow me." She hesitated, glancing back at the driver, who gave her a small nod of reassurance. With reluctant steps, she followed the concierge into a private elevator that whisked her to the top floor. The doors opened to reveal a suite that could have been lifted from a dream. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed a panoramic view of the city skyline, and every surface gleamed with understated luxury. A grand piano sat in one corner, and a bottle of champagne chilled in a silver bucket on the dining table. "All of this, for me," Samantha whispered. "Yes, ma'am," the concierge replied with a practiced smile. "Your stylists will be arriving shortly." "My what?" Before she could ask more, the doorbell chimed, and a team of professionals flooded into the room. They carried garment bags, cases of makeup, and enough equipment to stage a runway show. Samantha's protests were drowned out by their efficiency as they began their work. Hours later, she stood in front of a full-length mirror, staring at her reflection. She barely recognized herself. Her auburn hair was sleek and shining, styled in soft waves that framed her face. Subtle makeup highlighted her best features without overpowering them, and the emerald gown she wore hugged her figure in ways that made her feel both vulnerable and powerful. "You're a knockout," one of the stylists said, grinning. Samantha didn't reply. Her mind buzzed with disbelief and unease. She had been dragged into a world so far removed from her own that it felt surreal, like playing a part in someone else's story. That evening, Mike arrived to check on her progress. He was back in his tailored suit, looking as polished as ever. When he saw her, his usual composure slipped for just a moment, his eyes betraying a flicker of surprise. "You clean up well," he said, his tone unreadable. Samantha smirked, masking her nerves. "You've got a knack for backhanded compliments, don't you?" "You'll do fine tomorrow," he said, ignoring her jab. "Just remember, be yourself. That's what makes you stand out." "Be myself?" she echoed, arching a brow. "I thought the whole point was to make me someone else." Mike's lips twitched into a faint smile. "Not quite. The point is to show them something real." As night fell, and Mike left her alone in the suite, Samantha sat by the window, staring out at the glittering city below. Her nerves buzzed with anticipation and dread. This wasn't just about the money anymore. She had agreed to play a role, but she couldn't shake the feeling that she was stepping into something far more complicated than she'd realized. Tomorrow would change everything. The hotel suite was unlike anything Samantha had ever experienced. Plush carpets, sprawling views of the city skyline, and a bed that looked softer than any cloud she'd imagined. Yet, the opulence didn't distract her for long. Questions gnawed at her. Why had Mike chosen her? What was his real plan? As she sat on the edge of the bed, a knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. It was a courier delivering a sleek black envelope embossed with gold. Inside, a handwritten note from Mike read, "Dinner tomorrow, 7 p.m., Spectre Tower." It wasn't a request. The next evening, Samantha found herself seated in a private dining room high above the city, the glittering lights below seeming almost surreal. Mike was already there, seated at the head of a long, polished table. His demeanor was calm but guarded, his blue eyes studying her as she entered. "You clean up well again," he remarked, gesturing to the dress he'd sent earlier, a tailored emerald green gown that hugged her figure perfectly. "You said that already," Samantha replied, sitting across from him. "Is that your go-to line, or do you recycle compliments?" A faint smile curved his lips. "I like your attitude. It's refreshing." Samantha leaned back, crossing her arms. "You're not here to flatter me, so why don't you get to the point?" Mike's expression turned serious. "You held your own last night, more than I expected, but I need to know something." He leaned forward, his voice low. "What's your story, Samantha? The real one?" She blinked, caught off guard by the question. "My story? I didn't realize this was part of the job description." "It wasn't," he admitted, "but I want to know who I'm dealing with." She hesitated. Sharing her past wasn't something she did lightly, but something in Mike's gaze, a mix of curiosity and genuine interest, made her relent. "I was raised in the system," she began, her voice steady despite the memories resurfacing. "Bounced from one foster home to another. The good ones didn't last, and the bad ones, well, let's just say they're part of why I ended up on the streets." Mike listened intently, his expression unreadable. "Life hasn't been kind," Samantha continued, "but I'm still here, that's all that matters, right?" She forced a smile, her armor slipping back into place. Mike nodded slowly. "You've been through a lot, but you're stronger for it." "And you?" she countered. "What's your story, Mr. Spectre? Or do billionaires come with ready-made backstories?" He chuckled, a sound that seemed almost genuine. "Fair question. My life wasn't always easy either. Grew up in a small town, watched my parents struggle to make ends meet. I worked my way up, built my company from nothing." His voice hardened. "But success comes with its own price." Samantha tilted her head. "What price could someone like you possibly pay?" Mike's eyes darkened. "Trust. Everyone wants something, even those closest to you, especially them." The weight of his words hung between them, unspoken pain woven into his tone. "Is that why you chose me?" Samantha asked. "Because I'm not part of your world." "Partly," Mike admitted, "and because you don't fake who you are, it's a rare quality." The conversation shifted as dinner was served, but the air between them remained charged. For every answer Samantha received, more questions surfaced. Later that evening, back in her suite, Samantha found herself replaying their conversation. Mike was an enigma, A man who seemed to have everything yet carried invisible scars. But his secrets weren't her concern. Her role was temporary, her involvement transactional, or so she told herself. The next few days were a whirlwind of appearances and preparations. Samantha quickly learned how to navigate the sharp-edged world of high society. She was a quick study, her street smarts serving her well in a realm where every smile concealed a dagger. But as she played her part, cracks in Mike's carefully constructed facade began to show. She noticed the moments when his charm slipped, revealing a man burdened by something he wouldn't share. One evening, after another gala, Samantha and Mike returned to the penthouse he'd offered her as a base. She poured herself a glass of water and looked at him, still in his tailored suit staring out at the city. "Tell me the truth," she said suddenly. He turned, surprised. "About what?" "About why you're doing all this," she pressed. "The money, the gala, the games. What are you trying to prove?" Mike's jaw tightened. For a moment she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he sighed. "I'm trying to save my company." Her brow furrowed. "What does that have to do with me?" "There's a board meeting next week," he explained. "Certain people are pushing for a merger that would strip me of control. They think I'm too detached. Bringing someone like you shakes things up, makes them second-guess their assumptions about me." Samantha stared at him, disbelief mingling with anger. "So I'm just a pawn in your corporate chess game?" Mike met her gaze, his expression unreadable. "It's more than that now." Before she could demand clarification, he added, "You've done more than I expected, Samantha, and I owe you for that." She scoffed. "Save the gratitude, Mike. I'm just here to do a job." But as she turned away, she couldn't shake the feeling that their roles were becoming more tangled than either of them had anticipated. And for the first time, Samantha wondered if walking away would be as simple as they'd agreed. Samantha adjusted the crimson cocktail dress Mike had sent over earlier that day, its fabric hugging her curves like a second skin. Every stitch screamed wealth and exclusivity, and it was worlds apart from anything she'd ever imagined wearing. But tonight wasn't about blending in. It was about standing out. Another gala, another performance. She was getting used to the rhythm of Mike's world, dazzling smiles, perfectly timed laughs, and keeping her eyes open for the hidden power plays that dictated the lives of the elite. But something about tonight felt different. "You ready?" Mike asked as she descended the penthouse stairs. He was waiting near the door, his tuxedo tailored to perfection. "As ready as I'll ever be," she replied, forcing a smile. Mike studied her for a moment, his expression unreadable. "You look stunning," she smirked, masking the flicker of warmth his words stirred. "Careful, Spectre. Compliments like that might make me think you're enjoying this arrangement." His lips twitched into a half-smile, but his usual sharp wit was absent. The gala was held at an opulent estate on the city's outskirts. Chandeliers glittered like constellations overhead, and a string quartet played softly in the background. As Samantha and Mike entered, a hush fell over the crowd. "They're staring," she whispered. "Good," Mike replied. "Let them wonder." For the first hour, it was business as usual. Mike mingled with potential allies and adversaries, his charm as polished as the marble floors beneath their feet. Samantha played her part effortlessly, her wit and authenticity disarming even the most skeptical socialites. But then she saw her, a tall, elegant woman with raven black hair and piercing green eyes entered the room, her presence commanding attention. Samantha noticed the way Mike's posture stiffened, his jaw tightening ever so slightly. "Who's that?" Samantha asked, her curiosity piqued. "Lydia Shaw," Mike replied tersely. "CEO of Amaris Group. She's one of the board members I told you about." And she's not exactly a fan of mine." Lydia approached, her smile as sharp as a blade. "Mike," she said, her voice smooth as silk. "Always a pleasure." "Lydia," Mike replied evenly. Her gaze shifted to Samantha, appraising her with an unsettling intensity. "And you must be the infamous Samantha," she said, extending a hand. "I've heard so much about you." Samantha accepted the handshake, matching Lydia's cool demeanor. "All good things, I hope." Lydia's smile didn't reach her eyes. "That depends." As the conversation unfolded, Samantha quickly realized Lydia wasn't here to exchange pleasantries. Every comment was laced with subtle barbs, aimed at unsettling both her and Mike. "Quite the Cinderella story," Lydia remarked at one point, "but fairy tales don't usually last, do they?" Samantha's smile didn't falter. "That depends on the storyteller. Some of us prefer happy endings. Mike's hand brushed against hers. A subtle gesture, but it spoke volumes. He was silently urging her to hold her ground. As the evening wore on, Samantha found herself on the terrace, savoring a moment of quiet. The city lights twinkled in the distance, a reminder of the world she'd left behind, even if only temporarily. "Impressive," a voice said behind her. She turned to see Lydia, her green eyes glinting in the moonlight. "I could say the same about you," Samantha replied cautiously. Lydia leaned against the railing, her expression unreadable. "You're different from the usual women Mike surrounds himself with. I'll give you that. Should I take that as a compliment?" "Take it however you like," Lydia said with a faint smirk. "But let me give you a piece of advice. Men like Mike, they don't make decisions lightly. If you think you're just here to play a role, you're underestimating him." Samantha frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" Lydia straightened, her tone suddenly cold. "It means you should be careful. Mike has a way of using people, even when he doesn't mean to." Before Samantha could respond, Lydia walked away, leaving her with more questions than answers. Back inside, Samantha found Mike speaking with an older man she recognized from the papers, Alan Whitmore, another key board member. She noticed the tension between them, the way Alan's smile didn't quite reach his eyes. "You've made quite the impression," Alan said, turning his attention to Samantha. "Mike's been full of surprises lately." "That's what I'm here for," she replied, her tone light but guarded. Alan chuckled, but there was an edge to it. "Well, enjoy it while it lasts. The corporate world has a way of eating people alive." Samantha felt Mike's hand on her back, a subtle but firm signal to move on. As the night wound down, Samantha and Mike returned to the limo in silence. She could feel the tension radiating off him. His usual composure cracked. "Lydia doesn't like you very much," Samantha said, breaking the silence. Mike exhaled sharply. "She's been gunning for my position for years. Tonight was just another move in her game." "And what about Alan?" "Alan's loyal to whoever benefits him most," Mike replied bitterly. "Right now, that's Lydia." Samantha studied him, her earlier conversation with Lydia echoing in her mind. "She warned me about you, you know. Said you have a way of using people." Mike's jaw tightened. "Did she?" "She also said you don't make decisions lightly," Samantha added. "So tell me, Mike, what's your real plan here?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he leaned back, his gaze fixed on the passing city lights. "My plan is to keep what's mine," he said finally, "by any means necessary." Samantha shivered, not from the cold, but from the weight of his words. Back at the penthouse, Samantha couldn't sleep. Lydia's warning, Alan's cryptic remarks, and Mike's unwavering determination, it all pointed to something much bigger than she'd anticipated. She got up and walked to the window, staring out at the city. This arrangement had seemed simple at first. A temporary role, a chance to change her circumstances. But now she wasn't so sure. Mike was playing a dangerous game, and she was caught in the middle. And the more she tried to convince herself that it wasn't her fight, the more she realized she was already invested. For better or worse, her fate was now tied to his. As the city slept, Samantha resolved to uncover the truth about Mike, about Lydia, and about the forces pulling their strings. But she had no idea just how deep the rabbit hole would go. The days leading up to the board meeting passed in a blur of tension and whispered conversations. Mike had become increasingly guarded, his sharp intellect focused entirely on countering Lydia's maneuverings. Samantha, meanwhile, had her own questions swirling in her mind, most of them unanswered. She had resolved to keep her distance emotionally, to remind herself that this was just a job. But every interaction with Mike, his rare, unguarded moments of vulnerability, the intensity in his eyes when he spoke about protecting what he'd built, drew her in deeper. It was the night before the meeting when everything came to a head. Samantha had just finished a phone call with the stylist, arranging her outfit for the next day, when she heard a knock at the door. Mike stood there, his tie undone, his usually immaculate appearance slightly disheveled. His eyes carried a weight she hadn't seen before. "Can I come in?" he asked. She nodded, stepping aside to let him enter. Mike paced the room for a moment before speaking. "Tomorrow's going to be intense," he began, his voice low. "More intense than pretending to be your fiancé in front of the city's elite," she quipped, trying to lighten the mood. But Mike didn't smile. "Samantha, I need you to understand something. This isn't just about me keeping control of the company. It's about protecting everything I've worked for. Everything my parents sacrificed to give me the chance to build. She folded her arms, watching him carefully. And Lydia? What's her stake in all of this? Lydia's family owned a stake in Spectre Enterprises before I took over. She's been waiting for an opportunity to claw her way back in and dismantle everything I've done. If she wins tomorrow, it's not just me who loses. Hundreds of people, thousands, will lose their jobs when she guts the company for a quick profit. The conviction in his voice was unmistakable. For the first time, Samantha began to see the stakes not just through her own lens, but through his. "And what happens if you lose?" she asked. Mike stopped pacing, his gaze meeting hers. "I don't intend to lose." The board meeting was held in the Spectre Tower's grand conference room, its walls lined with glass that offered a sweeping view of the city. The air was thick with tension as Samantha entered alongside Mike, her presence drawing curious looks from the assembled executives. She was wearing a sleek black dress and diamond earrings, carefully chosen to project confidence and sophistication. But it wasn't just her appearance that caught their attention. It was the way she carried herself, unflinching under their scrutiny. "Gentlemen," Mike began as they took their seats, his voice commanding. "And Lydia." The room chuckled nervously, though Lydia's sharp smile never wavered. "This meeting," Mike continued, "is to discuss the proposed merger with Amaris Group, a proposal I strongly oppose." The discussion that followed was a masterclass in corporate warfare. Lydia was relentless, presenting her case with precision and charm, painting Mike as an out-of-touch leader clinging to outdated ideals. But Mike countered with equal force, outlining the long-term vision for Spectre Enterprises and the catastrophic consequences of dismantling it for short-term gain. Samantha watched in awe as he held his ground, his passion and determination shining through every word. But she also noticed the cracks, the subtle moments when the pressure threatened to overwhelm him. It was in one such moment that Samantha decided to act. "Excuse me," she said, her voice cutting through the heated debate. All eyes turned to her. Lydia arched an eyebrow. "And what does Samantha bring to this conversation?" Samantha smiled, unbothered by the condescension. "Perspective. You see, I may not have a seat on this board, but I've spent the last few weeks watching this man fight for this company. And I can tell you this much, he's not fighting for himself. He's fighting for every person whose livelihood depends on Spectre Enterprises." The room fell silent as Samantha continued, her voice steady. "You talk about profits and efficiency, but Mike talks about people, about legacy. And that's the kind of leadership this company needs." Lydia's smile faltered, if only for a moment. The vote was close, too close. As the results were tallied, Samantha sat beside Mike, her hands clenched tightly in her lap. She could feel the tension radiating off him, though he kept his expression neutral. When the final vote was announced, Mike exhaled slowly. He'd won, by a single vote. The room erupted into murmurs, but Samantha barely noticed. She was too busy watching Mike, whose shoulders had slumped ever so slightly in relief. Later that evening, they stood on the balcony of his penthouse, the city spread out before them. Mike held a glass of whiskey, his tie once again undone. Samantha leaned against the railing, the cool night air brushing against her skin. "You did it," she said softly. "We did it," he corrected, glancing at her. She laughed. "Don't give me too much credit. I just gave a speech. A speech that turned the tide," he pointed out. "You were incredible, Samantha." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Samantha asked the question that had been lingering in her mind. "What happens now?" Mike turned to face her, his gaze steady. "That depends. What do you want to happen?" Samantha blinked, caught off guard by the vulnerability in his tone. "Mike, this was a job. That's all it was supposed to be," she said, though her voice wavered slightly. "And now?" he pressed. She hesitated. "Now, I don't know." Mike stepped closer, his presence warm and grounding. "Stay," he said simply. Samantha searched his face, looking for any trace of manipulation or insincerity, but all she saw was a man offering her something she'd never thought she'd find: stability, partnership, and maybe even a chance at something more. "I'll think about it," she said finally, her lips curving into a small smile. "That's all I ask," Mike replied, his own smile softening the intensity of his gaze. As the city lights twinkled around them, Samantha felt the weight of the moment, the possibilities stretching before her, the risks and rewards intertwined. She had started this journey with nothing to lose. Now, she realized, she had everything to gain. The end, or perhaps just the beginning.